The scent of cinnamon and brewing tea usually brought a comforting warmth to Reagan's small, tidy kitchen, but today a knot of worry tightened in her stomach. Elaine's 70th birthday was fast approaching, and Reagan was no closer to finding the perfect gift. It wasn't that she harboured a deep, abiding love for her mother-in-law. Rather, it was a quiet respect, tinged with a profound sense of empathy. Elaine, a widow for nearly 2 decades, lived a solitary life in her charming little cottage nestled among towering oak trees. Reagan's husband Ben, Elaine's only son, was rarely able to make time for his mother. If it weren't for Reagan's gentle nudges and persistent reminders, Elaine would hardly ever hear from him. Ben was a man perpetually too busy, always chasing after the next big entrepreneurial venture. Or so he claimed. Reagan had long seen through the façade. His business dealings never seemed to generate any income, only a steady stream of expenses that bled their modest household dry. Reagan, a dedicated elementary school teacher, watched her meagre salary disappear into Ben's hands almost as soon as it arrived. "We have to pay the mortgage, Reagan. Don't you understand? Do you want us out on the street?" he'd often demand, his voice edged with a practised urgency. Reagan, weary of the constant struggle, never argued. She knew deep down that their connection had been fraying for years, like an old quilt unravelling at the seams. And then there was the ache of the empty nursery, a dream she'd cherished since their wedding day, a dream perpetually deferred by their strained finances. Ben controlled every dollar, and where those dollars vanished, Reagan could never quite discern. She often found herself begging him almost tearfully for every last cent needed for even the most basic necessities, forced to justify each request. This constant nickel and diming was exhausting, a relentless drain on her spirit. Yet Reagan clung to the conviction she had been raised with. Family was a sacred trust, to be preserved and cherished, no matter the challenges. Knowing Elaine's milestone birthday was imminent, Reagan had been tucking away what little she could from her sparse earnings months ago. But trying to save from the few dollars Ben grudgingly allowed her was like trying to catch starlight in a sieve. Pulling out her small stash of bills and coins, she counted them, a wave of despondency washing over her. What could she possibly buy an elder woman with such a paltry sum? Something that would genuinely bring joy to her heart. She knew better than to ask Ben for help. He'd dismiss her, promise to buy something himself, and undoubtedly show up with a thoughtless trinket that would only embarrass them both. Reagan saw only one path forward. She had to pawn her most treasured possession, a delicate gold brooch adorned with tiny shimmering emeralds, a legacy from her beloved mother. Reagan rarely wore it, preferring to keep it safe, sometimes just taking it out to admire its intricate beauty, always in secret from Ben. She feared he'd immediately suggest selling it, knowing its considerable value. While selling was out of the question, pawning offered a lifeline, a temporary solution, a way to reclaim it later. How she would manage that, she wasn't sure, but a flicker of hope remained. Perhaps a bonus from school or a small freelance project would appear. She refused to lose her mother's keepsake forever. She'd fight Ben tooth and nail if she had to. With a heavy heart, Reagan carefully tucked the precious brooch into her purse and set off for the pawn shop across town. She'd never stepped foot in such a place, and the hushed whispers about them weren't exactly comforting, but what choice did she have? As she approached the glass door, she hesitated, her steps faltering. "Just alone, Reagan," she coached herself. "You'll get it back." Still, she couldn't resist one last look. Reaching into her bag, she pulled out the brooch, allowing its sparkle to catch the afternoon sunlight. The street was quiet, thankfully, so Reagan felt no immediate rush. She held the brooch in her palm, lost in the delicate dance of light on the tiny emeralds, a tangible link to her mother's loving spirit. "Oh my!" a tiny voice piped up beside her, startling her. Reagan spun around. A little girl, perhaps 7 years old, stood gazing up at the brooch, her eyes wide with wonder. Reagan felt no alarm from the child's presence. Instead, a gentle smile touched her lips. "Do you like it?" she asked, holding the brooch a little closer. "Oh, yes, I have one just like it," the girl declared, her voice bright and confident. Reagan chuckled softly, tucking the brooch back into her bag, a playful teasing thought sparking in her mind. "Oh, I doubt that very much. It's unique." "No, it's not. It's exactly the same," the girl insisted, her brow furrowed in earnest. "And my mummy also said it was the only one." She paused, her gaze steady on Reagan. "And you thought that too?" The girl's tone was surprisingly serious. Reagan, however, felt a gentle amusement. The child was likely just imagining things. Perhaps her mother did own a lovely piece of jewellery, but certainly not this brooch. Reagan's own mother had always told her that her father had commissioned a unique design from a gifted artisan, a one-of-a-kind creation. But then a chilling thought began to prickle at the edges of her mind. Who was your mother?" Reagan asked, her voice barely a whisper. The little girl's expression clouded with a sudden sadness. "She's not here any more. She passed away." A beat of silence hung in the air. "But the brooch is real, I promise." Her eyes, so earnest, met Reagan's. "Don't you believe me? Want me to show you?" The pleading look in the little girl's eyes, a silent plea to share her treasure, or perhaps just to connect with a kind adult, a small orphan yearning for a mother's touch, sealed it. Reagan agreed, a quiet ache forming in her chest as she followed the child. On their way, the little one chirped out her name, Mackenzie, and proudly announced she was in 2nd grade, living with her stepfather, whom she called Uncle Mike, since her mother had passed. Does he treat you kindly?" Reagan asked, her heart constricting at the revelation of the child's circumstances. Mackenzie's eyes, bright and innocent, widened slightly. "Oh, no, he's mostly good. He drinks a lot, it's true, but when he's had too much he just falls asleep. He never yells." She paused thoughtfully. "He works and I get child allowance, though in fact, he gets that. So he has enough for his drinks, but he buys me things too. Food, and he even got me a new backpack for school." "And the brooch?" Reagan prompted gently, remembering the shared secret. "Oh, he doesn't know about it. I hide it in my special box," Mackenzie whispered, her voice conspiratorial. "Mummy said it was worth a lot, and if he found it, he might sell it." Once inside their small, sparsely furnished apartment, Mackenzie immediately scampered to a loose floorboard near her narrow cot. With a triumphant grin, she pulled out a velvet pouch and carefully presented a gleaming brooch to Reagan. "Here, compare them." Reagan, her hands trembling slightly, held the two pieces side by side. A gasp escaped her lips. They were unequivocally identical. The same unique swirl of gold, the exact delicate placement of the tiny emeralds. Could her own father have misled her mother? It seemed utterly unlike him. The piece had always felt so distinct, so one of a kind. Yet here was its mirror image. Before Reagan could fully process the dizzying implications, the apartment door creaked open. Mackenzie's Uncle Mike stood in the doorway, his eyes bloodshot, the stale scent of spirits clinging to him. Reagan instinctively shoved both brooches into her coat pocket, wanting to shield their delicate beauty from his gaze. "Who are you?"
And what are you doing in my home?" he grumbled, his voice rough, suspicion clouding his features. "Mackenzie, who is this woman?"
Reagan, summoning every ounce of her professional composure, adopted a firm yet gentle tone. "I'm Miss Evans, Mackenzie's teacher. I was just checking in on her living arrangements." Uncle Mike's bluster immediately deflated, his shoulders slumping.
"Living arrangements? They're fine. Here. See, she has a bed, all her things." "You didn't complain, did you, Mackenzie?"
he asked, turning to the little girl. "No, Uncle Mike, of course not," Mackenzie chirped, shaking her head. "No, Mackenzie hasn't complained at all," Reagan confirmed smoothly, her gaze unwavering. "However, it's standard procedure for us to monitor the well-being of children growing up without a mother." Uncle Mike, still muttering about their perfectly suitable conditions, practically ushered her out the door. Reagan didn't even have a moment to return Mackenzie's brooch. But she gave the girl a reassuring look, promising with her eyes that they would meet again. As she stepped out, she called back, "See you at school, Mackenzie." The little girl nodded, a glimmer of understanding in her wide eyes. Reagan walked home, her mind consumed by the two identical treasures nestled in her pocket, the impending visit to the pawn shop completely forgotten. That evening, the pawn shop resurfaced in her thoughts, prompting her to approach Ben. "Ben, what are we going to do? I don't have enough for a truly special gift for your mother." Ben waved a dismissive hand. "Don't fret, Reagan. Do you really think I'd let my own mother go without a gift? It'll be from both of us, you'll see. She'll be thrilled," he assured her, though he offered no details, despite Reagan's gentle inquiries. As a result, they arrived at Elaine's cosy cottage on her 70th birthday with conspicuously empty hands. Reagan had managed to grab a small bouquet of creamy roses on the way, unwilling to arrive completely empty-handed. They walked in, and Reagan offered Elaine a warm hug and heartfelt congratulations. Ben, after a perfunctory kiss on his mother's cheek, mumbled his congratulations and announced that the main present would be delivered a little later. Reagan assumed it was a new armchair, perhaps, or a gleaming kitchen appliance arriving by courier, and she felt a small measure of relief. Ben wouldn't dare give his own mother something trivial on her milestone birthday, not with so many relatives gathered, not with his reputation to uphold. He always loved to make a grand impression, and every guest present was buzzing with curiosity about the big gift from Elaine's only son. But what unfolded next was beyond anyone's wildest imaginations. Instead of a delivery van, a gleaming procession of luxury cars swept up the quiet driveway leading to Elaine's cottage. From the lead vehicle emerged a strikingly beautiful young woman, impeccably dressed, carrying an enormous, elegantly wrapped gift box and a flamboyant bouquet of crimson roses. "Dearest Elaine, happy birthday," the stranger declared, embracing the bewildered hostess and kissing her on the cheek. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Then Ben, his voice resonating with an unsettling calm. "Mum, this is how I wanted to introduce you to my fiancée, Brielle. Yes, Reagan and I will be divorcing very soon. Brielle and I are getting married. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. This daughter-in-law is far superior to the last. She knows how to earn money, and she'll give you healthy, beautiful grandchildren." A stunned silence descended upon the gathering, punctuated by hushed gasps. How could he introduce a fiancé with his legal wife standing right there? No one knew that this audacious public display was Brielle's demand. She had insisted Ben present her to his mother in exactly this manner, and simultaneously inform Reagan of their impending divorce. Ben, utterly captivated by his new love, obeyed her every command. Brielle was the wealthy daughter of influential people, precisely the kind of wife he had always dreamed of, the one who would allow him to finally silence all those who doubted his capabilities. The feelings of those around him, especially Reagan's, were utterly irrelevant. He didn't even register the shocked whispers that swept through the guests. Such brazen cruelty, such a heartless display to humiliate Reagan like that. And poor Elaine, her face was drained of all colour, whispered friends and family, their voices laced with indignant sorrow. Reagan, in the bewildering haze of the moment, hadn't fully grasped the scale of Ben's betrayal, but as the full weight of his calculated demolition of her life settled, a cold, suffocating darkness enveloped her, and she lost consciousness. A flurry of panicked activity erupted. No one could rouse her, and soon the wail of an ambulance siren pierced the celebratory atmosphere. Reagan awoke in a sterile hospital room. The harsh, fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the soft glow of Elaine's living room just hours before. The events of the party rushed back, though the reason for her sudden collapse remained a hazy question. Undoubtedly, Ben's bombshell announcement was enough to shatter anyone, yet she had never fainted in her life. "Doctor, what happened to me?" she whispered, her voice feeling strangely detached from her body. A kind-faced physician, his eyes crinkling at the corners with reassurance, smiled gently. "Nothing alarming, dear. You're simply pregnant. It's quite a common reaction in early stages, sometimes to overwhelming stress." A low moan escaped Reagan's lips, and she covered her face with a trembling hand. A baby. She had yearned for a child for so long, she had almost given up hope. And now, this precious miracle had finally arrived at the very moment her world had crumbled beneath the weight of her husband's treachery. "Please don't distress yourself," the doctor continued, his voice soothing. "Your baby is perfectly fine, unharmed. Your pregnancy will proceed quite normally." "Pregnancy?" Reagan cried, her voice rising in a desperate plea. "After what that man, the father of this child, just did? It would be better if this baby never saw the light of day. Perhaps that's why I couldn't conceive before. A mercy I didn't recognize." "My dear woman, what are you saying?" The doctor's tone was firm now, though still compassionate. "Whatever your husband has done, is this innocent child to blame? And are you not blameless in all of this?" "But I am not to blame," she retorted, her voice trembling but resolute. "I don't want this baby to be born. Please, schedule me for the procedure." No. Wait. The doctor held up a calming hand. "First, you need to breathe to allow yourself to process everything. Then, I believe you'll realize you have no right to make such a decision." But Reagan was unyielding. She continued to insist on the termination. Realizing that persuasion alone wouldn't work, the doctor decided on a different approach. "Very well, I won't press you further, but tell you what, let's take a walk to another ward. There are women there who would be very interested to hear your story." He led Reagan to a quiet room where several women lay in beds, each grappling with the painful journey of infertility. "Ladies, I'd like you to meet a patient. She, like many of you, had almost given up hope of motherhood, only to discover she's expecting. However, this news arrived at the very moment her husband announced he was leaving her for another woman. She decided that, in this situation, it would be best for the child not to be born
as it won't have a father. What are your thoughts on this?"
"She's out of her mind!" exclaimed one woman, her voice sharp with disbelief. "What does the father have to do with it? Did you want a child? Just to keep your husband by your side?" No, don't do it!" another pleaded, her voice thick with emotion. The women, in a chorus of impassioned pleas, urged Reagan not to deny her unborn child the right to life. Overwhelmed, Reagan buried her face in her hands and rushed out of the room. "Oh, yes," she finally murmured, a long, shuddering breath escaping her. "I think I truly lost myself for a moment, insisting on that procedure." Soon after, she was discharged from the hospital. Ben never called. He was completely uninterested in what had happened to the wife he had already erased from his life. Elaine, however, had called several times and knew exactly what transpired. So, when Reagan was discharged and arrived at the apartment, she had shared with Ben to gather her belongings. Her mother-in-law was waiting. Elaine embraced her, her eyes brimming with tears. "Reagan, believe me, I'm just as appalled by Ben's actions as you are. I've sent him away, told him I never want to see him again, that he's no longer my son. Please come stay with me. We can wait for this precious baby together in peace." "Thank you, Elaine," Reagan replied, her voice soft but firm. "I've always respected you, and I will respect you even more if you can somehow find it in your heart to forgive your son. Ben treated me terribly, but he is still your child. You know, I almost made a terrible mistake myself, wanting to end this pregnancy. But I was talked out of it, and now I realize this baby needs you, just as you need him. So please forgive Ben. You can still be a grandmother when your grandchild arrives, but for now, I need to figure out life without Ben." They parted on a cordial note, though Elaine seemed visibly disappointed by Reagan's decision. But Reagan was resolute. She would find her own apartment and prepare to welcome her baby alone. And it wasn't just preparing for the baby. She had another urgent matter, one that tugged persistently at her thoughts. She needed to uncover how Mackenzie came to possess a brooch identical to her own. She couldn't abandon the little girl either. Mackenzie's story, a child without a mother, living with a stepfather consumed by alcohol, had deeply touched her heart. But first and foremost, she needed to unravel the mystery of the identical jewellery. Since those who could have shed light on the matter were no longer living, there was only one path left. She would hire a private investigator. Reagan knew with absolute certainty that experts of this calibre wouldn't work for free, and yet she had no money. So, after tracking down a seasoned private investigator named Mr. Brooks, she laid out her offer, the antique brooch itself as his payment. "It's quite valuable," she assured the man, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart, "and I'll give it to you once you uncover how there came to be two identical pieces." Mr. Brooks, intrigued by the unusual request, agreed to take on the case. The mystery, he admitted, piqued his professional curiosity. Unearthing the truth proved less arduous than Reagan had imagined for an experienced investigator with a wide network of contacts. Soon Mr. Brooks met Reagan and revealed a truly astonishing story. "It's quite simple, actually," he began, settling back in his chair. "Your father did indeed commission that brooch, but not as a singular item. He ordered two identical pieces, intending to give one to each of his women." Reagan gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Two women? My father? But he was married to my mum." Mr. Brooks nodded gravely. "Yes, your father was a complicated man. It's too late to judge him now, and frankly, there's no point. We'll never truly know his reasons, but thanks to these brooches,
gifts from him to them, you now know everything."
"So that deceased woman," Reagan whispered, her mind racing, "she was my half-sister? From my father?"
"That's precisely it," Mr. Brooks confirmed, a note of quiet sympathy in his voice. "Unfortunately, you've learned this truth too late, as your sister is no longer with us."
"But she has a daughter," Reagan countered, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. "That means Mackenzie. Mackenzie is my niece. This is for the best. If I can prove our kinship, I can truly help her."
"Indeed," Mr. Brooks agreed. "It's far too late to condemn anyone, but if this knowledge can lead to a good deed, then I believe we uncovered the truth for a meaningful reason."
Reagan sighed, the weight of the revelation settling over her, and extended the brooch, her promised payment. But Mr. Brooks gently waved her hand away.
"No, thank you. I don't need your jewellery. Not only was the case fascinating, but the story itself will serve me well. I'm working on my memoirs, and I believe this particular tale will be quite compelling. I hope you don't mind, of course. I won't be mentioning any names."
"No, of course not. I don't mind at all," Reagan said, a grateful smile spreading across her face. "And thank you, truly, for finding the answers, and for not taking the last tangible memory I have of my mother." Their conversation didn't end there. Mr. Brooks, now genuinely invested, inquired further about Reagan's family and her parents' lives. Meanwhile, Reagan's mind was already spinning with plans. How she would establish her kinship with Mackenzie and rescue the little girl from her difficult circumstances. Despite her own pregnancy and the daunting tasks ahead, finalising her divorce from Ben, proving her relation to Mackenzie, and securing guardianship, Reagan tackled these matters without delay, promising Mackenzie a swift victory. The little girl trapped in her unsettling home life beamed with a joy Reagan hadn't seen before. "Uncle Mike still drinks all the time now," Mackenzie confided sadly during one of Reagan's visits. "And other people come over always drunk." Reagan didn't forget about Mr. Brooks either. She was genuinely eager to read his book, yearning to see her family's extraordinary story immortalised on paper. And he didn't disappoint. Before long, the private investigator's captivating memoirs were published, but this wasn't the greatest joy for Reagan. Her professional interactions with Mr. Brooks had blossomed into something more personal. After her divorce was finalised and she successfully gained guardianship of her niece, Mr. Brooks, undeterred by her pregnancy with another man's child, proposed. "I don't believe your ex-husband will claim him," he reassured her, his eyes warm with unwavering affection. "I'll simply register him under my name, and he will be considered my son." Reagan, deeply touched by his unconditional love, readily agreed. Her connection with her former mother-in-law, Elaine, also endured. Reagan felt a profound pity for the woman who had truly severed ties with her son, and she continued to nurture their bond. It was from Elaine that Reagan eventually learned of Ben's sad fate. He never married Brielle. She had become utterly disillusioned with her chosen partner, expecting Ben to become a worthy successor to her father's empire, a capable business partner. Instead, she discovered he was utterly incapable, his only talents limited to superficial charm and a reliance on others' resources. Eventually, she cast him aside. With nowhere else to go, Ben returned to his mother, a humbled, repentant figure. In due course, Reagan gave birth to a healthy baby boy, a tiny bundle of joy named David Brooks. Little David became the cherished darling of their happy family, a testament to the unexpected paths love and kindness can forge.